Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Mashonda Shines. Well, welcome back to another edition of Try Beginner's Luck. We're in the first week of February, which is Black History Month. And let me tell you, I have some Black history makers for sure. Well, being Black in triathlon is already a history maker because there's not many of us. But when you couple Black history plus triathlon plus world majors, you get an awesome combination. Well, as you know, this season is about going back to basics. I told you all last week how I got my start as doing the 5K. It's like the gateway, I don't want to say drug, but it's the gateway pathway into greater pastures if you desire to take it that way. Most people just do a 5K and that's fine. And that's okay. But sometimes people take it the distance and they go the extra miles. And that's my guest that I have today. So without further ado, I'm just going to get right into it and introduce them because they're pretty awesome. Well, if you're on social media in some capacity or been at a race, particularly Maryland, you've seen this gentleman. He's newer to the sport, but he's been around for a while. He is known as the Ironman. He is a deacon. Yes, he is. He's an athlete. He's a coach. He started the sport in 2017, and he is now bringing more people into the fold. He is an affiliate or maybe an ambassador or a coach for Triathlon, but his running is where that's his background. I met McKenley, funny story, before McKenley even started doing triathlons. Now, I'll tell you that story a little bit later. Now, my next guest, which I've already done this all wrong, but that's the part when you're doing live things, you're going to do things out of order. My next guest is my soror. Yes. She's a pretty girl indeed, but she's also a triathlete and a Guinness World Record holder, as well as my other guest. She got her start doing 5Ks, right? And she was like, I want to challenge myself to do more. But let me tell you, she's also a dancer. Don't get it twisted. If you've been in the Orlando area or was a part of the arena football team, the Orlando Predators, you might have seen her a season or two. Just putting that out there. But without further ado, I get to bring to this audience two Guinness World Record holders who have gotten their 6 world majors and are Ironman triathletes. That is Yolanda Holloway Stevens and McKenley Mason. Welcome, my friends, to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast. How y'all doing?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Hello there.
Hello there. Oh, so real quick, I met McKenley maybe in 2014 on a random because I needed to let go of a bib. And who would have known a couple of years later, here we are again. Not just that, we've seen each other at races, but here we are again. And I love how this sport really is inexhaustible in terms of its connections and how people can come together. So here we are with 2 Guinness World Record holders. How y'all feel about that? Let's start right there.
Surreal.
It's very
Unexpected.
unreal. Yes.
Exciting. I'll say that.
So how did it even come about? Like, how did you all, were you able to enter and say, hey, we want to be Guinness World Record holders, so let's do this? Like, what was that process about?
It was actually Abbott World Majors. The Guinness World Record is the most athletes to obtain their 6th star at the 2023 Tokyo Marathon. So anyone who participated and received their 6th star in Tokyo in 2023 was part of the world record. And McKinley and I were there together. He's my Tokyo Rumbu because
Yep.
we were there the whole time together hanging out. But yes, that's how we obtained it.
Now, did you and McKenley and the rest of the crew decide we're doing this together? How did that come about?
It's happenstance. It was my
Yeah.
last one, and it was Tokyo is so hard to get into, and it just so happened that we both went in for Tokyo that year and got in.
Yeah. And I told her, I said, I help you know, Tokyo is one of the hardest to make the cutoffs as far as 6 star. And so I told, like she said, she's my Tokyo run boo. So I told Yolanda, I was like, you know what? I said, I have the strategy. I already know. I said, but I need a watch keeper. I said, I'll run the strategy. I'll tell you, we're going to run the walk and we're going to build in an hour in this run. And you just keep the watch and let me know. And when we
It was
got to about,
surgical.
yeah, we got to mile like 14 or something like that. I think we could at least, we could have walked the rest of the race and made it.
Yeah.
So you developed a partnership and was like, let's make this happen. We here, let's make it happen.
Yeah.
We
But see,
did,
but
and his strategy was seamless, and it was military like because it was
yeah.
like, okay, run. All right, we're walking. Okay, we have this much time banked, and because Tokyo is so hard with its cutoffs, we saw people get the rope stretched in front of them to where they couldn't finish the race, and there were people running up not realizing they weren't going to make the cutoffs. I believe there are 6 cutoffs times that you
Yeah.
have to make during the Tokyo Marathon. And if you don't cross that line at the exact time, your race is done.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
But you guys did it. And we've all been in situations where cutoffs are a thing and it doesn't define you. But was your strategy 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, a minute on, a minute off? What was the strategy? If you could just reinforce that.
If I remember, I think it was like 3 and 1. I think it was 3 minutes and 1 minute. If I can recall, because normally I base the strategy on the race itself, but
Mhm.
because I knew I wanted to bank an hour, so I think I stretched it out to 3 minutes. Because a normal marathon I do like 1 minute 30 seconds, something like that. But I think it was 3 minutes and then 30-second walk, something like that.
But I think the strategy he had, we were going to go hard for the first half marathon. And I
Yeah,
think
that's what it was. That's what it was. Yes.
we ran the first five. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
after that, we went to intervals. And by the time we got to the half and we had passed, a certain number of cutoffs, we had banked a lot of time. Then we just enjoyed the sights from there.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. I love how you said that you wanted to bank time. And for those
Yes.
who are runners who are working on their long strategy of going after a half or a full marathon, how do you bank time with the run walk method?
Well, the way I build it is, I look at the time that it takes to get from point A to point B, and then it just become a math equation to say this is what I need to do if I just want to do it and get there at the required moment. So let's say, for an example, if it was 15 minutes, but if I want to bank, then I'm going to make it 12. And over the course of time, that 12 minutes would build in maybe 30 minutes or something like that. So I just do just a basic run formula or a clock formula or something like that.
And I'll also add on the run, I'm sorry, on the walk portion of the interval, that it's not a walk in the park. It has to be a brisk walk to keep up your pace, keep your heart rate up, and it's not a rest. It is active recovery, and you're really getting it as you're walking. You're just not going through the trauma on your knees and your legs of the jog, but you're taking that active recovery and then getting back to it.
Yeah, because normally, like when I begin the walk process, my heart rate, let's say for an example, would be on like 150. And by the time you do a 30-second walk, and like she said, such a power walk, and my heart rate will only go down by like 5 or 6 points. It don't like drop to like 125 or 120.
And do you use that strategy throughout all of your races, including your longer distance triathlon races?
I absolutely do. On my full Ironmans, because you've gone through 112 miles on the bike and you swam and you're tired really by the time, and it's all mental at that point. But my coach came up with a really good strategy of um, 0.45 mile run and then a zero point 0.5 mile active recovery. So you're really walking the last zero point 0.5 of every half mile. And I feel refreshed and I can kind of carry that interval through the whole race.
And then with me, my coach, me, said when I was training for my first Ironman, it was during the COVID season, so we had plenty of time to try different things. And I knew that nowhere in the world I was gonna, I was in the world where I was running marathons that's about like somewhere between 4 hours to 4 hours 45 minutes. And so when I started the Ironman marathon, I had to add on another hour, a minute and a half to 2 minutes per mile. And when I first started training, I couldn't do it because my heart rate would jump up. My heart rate would jump up. So I had to walk to keep the heart rate down. And then once I took a whole year to learn that process so I could run a whole marathon and stay in zone two. And once I've done that and done my Ironman, so now when I do individual races marathon, I still use that same strategy because when I finish, I don't feel beat up. My recovery, I can walk stairs the next day. It's just a better recovery. And I probably only lose about 10 minutes by doing walk run off of the regular when I beat myself up.
Interesting. Let's nail into that because I think sometimes people feel like if you do the run walk method, you lose a lot of time, and you just stated that you don't lose a lot of time, yet you
No.
feel refreshed.
Yes.
How much of a mindset shift for both you and Yolanda was it to do the run walk method without that feeling of, oh, I'm not running, because so many people are like, they can't do triathlons because I can't run. It's okay. If you can walk and keep a certain pace, you can still do the sport. So help us understand what that's like to have the mindset to know to run, to walk, and be okay with that.
I had to learn that through actually doing it. So before I got into triathlon and I was just running, my whole goal when I first started running is I wanted to do a sub 5 marathon. And I would go out and do marathons and I would just run until I couldn't run anymore. Then I would walk. And by this time, I've beaten myself up and I'm tired. And so that last half, I'd lose a lot of time because my legs were like jelly at that point. Um, but Space Coast Marathon in Florida, I had a pacer who said that he was going to do 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off, which means a 30-minute run and a 30-minute walk. And I immediately started looking for another pacer because I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to get sub 5 and doing that much walking. But he was surgical with his method. And I had my first PR, my first sub 5 doing 30-minute run, 30-minute walk. I was shocked. So after that, I was sold. So I knew that it's not about whether you run and whether you walk. It's about how disciplined you are in keeping that interval through the whole thing, as well as making sure that your walk is a brisk walk and that you're keeping your heart rate up so that you're not having to restart or feel like you're restarting every time you run.
And then with me, it was very frustrating because being that I train with Trot, their product is trust the process. And when I first started doing walk run, I felt defeated because I knew I couldn't do it without keeping my heart rate up. And then when I would go into a race and try it, and everybody else would take off, and I would be in the back, and I'm not used to that. So I had to develop some discipline. I had to trust the process. Then over a period of time, it became like this is the thing you really need to do because I love how I feel afterwards, and I just stayed at it and stayed at it.
And honestly, if you love how you feel afterwards, you're more likely to keep doing it and
Yep.
keep coming back. So
Yep.
let's start about your first, right? Like your gateway into this endurance sport that you all both love. I'm just telling you, you love it. I don't know if you love triathlon, but was running. You both started as runners. What was that
Yes.
experience like for both of you? Tell your story.
So for me, my whole fitness journey came because as a dancer, I tore my ACL twice, had to have my ACL reconstructed, had to stop dancing, put on a lot of weight. My doctor one day said, you have to lose it. Your mother has diabetes. Your father has heart disease. What are we doing? Right? Do you want to see your kids grow up? Do you want? And so it was kind of an eye-opening experience with that visit. So I got active and started walking. And that was a whole process in itself, how I began running. But my bucket list was to do a 5K. That was it. I had no plans on doing anything other than that. But like you mentioned it was that pathway, we won't say drug, pathway, that when you crossed it and you got that medal, it was like, okay, I want more. And that turned to a half marathon to marathons. And after I had done so many of those, I'm like, I want to challenge myself and maybe I'll do a triathlon, but I don't know how to swim. So let me go ahead and sign up for a race for accountability, and then I'll find a coach to teach me how to swim. And it was on from there.
And then with me, it was around when I was 52 years old when I first done my first marathon. I'm a Army veteran, so I always run 2 or 3 miles, always kind of stayed in shape. But being a veteran, being a soldier, most of us, I ain't gonna say all, a lot of us from my time frame were smokers and drinkers. And both of my parents died in their early 50s of smoking and drinking, which is these days considered such a young age. And when I was approaching 50, I thought to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to see can I outlive my parents. And just one day, I mean, I had some background story, but when I was 50 years old, I stopped drinking, I stopped running. And one day when I started running, it became just like a Forrest Gump story. I just ran. I never got tired. I just kept running. And next thing you know, I knew this guy that ran a marathon. He was a Navy guy. I'm like, the Navy can do it. I'm Army, and of course, I'm tougher than them. I'm like, well, let me try this marathon thing. And I'm from Richmond, Virginia, and I signed up. And I'm from the Richmond, Virginia area, and I signed up for the Richmond Marathon because they said it was fan friendly. It was a nice marathon for the first timer. And I went there. I really didn't have no particular training. I really didn't have particular shoes, the gels, and all that other stuff. But I knew I could run, and I knew I could train. And I went there, 52 years old. I ran that marathon that day. I think it was 4 hours 20 minutes. Without knowing nothing. and
Wow.
and believe it or not, today, even I know the things that I know, even though I'm much older, but that still is my marathon PR. I tell people once I got educated to run, it hindered me more than helped me. Because at first I was just running knowing, just know how, just physical body stuff and things like that. And
So
that led me into that was my first marathon. And what got me into triathlons, my brother gave me a bike one day because I think I was about 58 years old. He heard, he was ear hustling and heard me talking about I'd be great to have a bike so I could start cross training and take miles off my legs. And so he gave me a Walmart bike, $80-some bike. And when he gave it to me, it wasn't put together correctly. So I took it to the local bike shop. And once you go to the bike shop, you start meeting people and all of this. And next thing I know, one day I'm in a pool. Next thing I know, one day
Yeah.
I'm in open water. And one day, next thing, I signed up for an open water try. I don't know how. I still can't explain how I got there, but that's how it happened.
well, since we went right into the triathlon story, Yolanda, you might as well tell us how'd you get into triathlon as well?
Well, again, it was just me trying to find a way to challenge myself since I had gone from 5K being my bucket list. You could not have told me at the time where I couldn't walk a mile, there was no way that I was going to do a marathon, like 26.2 miles on purpose. No one could have sold me on that. But after I had done a few of those, I said, okay, well, now I'm like pumped. I'm like, I can do hard things. What's next? So I signed up for a triathlon. It was a sprint tri. I'll say it was a super sprint. The first part of it was in a pool, and I had a friend's mountain bike, big, heavy bike. And I finished the triathlon. But of course, the best part of that was running because I was a runner, but the swim was new to me. So I struggled on the swim. But by the time I got on my feet and I was running, I was good. But I remember a guy said, you did really well. He said, you're going to get another bike. And I was like, no, I just wanted to see if I could do a triathlon. And, this is a friend's bike. And I'm not getting another bike. And I did not too long ago a side by side of me on that bike. During the race, I had some workout tights on and a workout top. And I had like the helmet. It wasn't even the proper helmet. It was probably like a dirt bike helmet next to my first Ironman, where I did get my new bike. And I did something that I would not have ever imagined was possible, from not being able to walk a mile or struggling to walk a mile to doing 140.6 miles on purpose. It kind of boggles your mind sometimes, but yeah, it's we can do hard things. And it took a lot for me to believe that.
I love both of the stories because both of them are rooted um, in health, but also the history of families and what we have to overcome, from diabetes to, cardiovascular disease. And McKenley, with you, it was, alcoholism and smoking and making that deliberate change to say, today is the day. And it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yep,
Yeah.
easy.
wasn't easy. Still not easy.
And right, because you have to make those conscious, because sometimes it's easy to want to go backwards. And some people do go backwards. I know I have
Yes.
in many instances.
Yes.
So this is just to tell you that wherever you are, whatever you are going through, when you are ready to make up your mind and make up your, to make up your mind that you want to change and you want to do it, it will happen. And don't be afraid to try something different. Yolanda and McKenley, you both got into the tri space later in life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 58.
I was 42 when I took my first swim lesson.
You hear that? First swim lesson at 42. And McKenley, you had to learn how to swim as well. So
Yes.
around 58-ish, but you also got into running at 50.
Yes. Yep. I
So
sure
for
did.
those who think that life is over, baby, listen, I think the endurance world and endurance sport is made for those who are above 40.
And normally when I share the story to people, they're supposed to be like, but what if you would have started at a certain time? And I tell them, in life in general, our time, we have no idea when it is, because if I would have started some of this stuff at, let's say, 35 or 40, I'd probably been frustrated and wouldn't have done it a couple of times and wouldn't have went back to it because it wasn't my time. So we don't know what our time is, but when we show up, then time knows us. That's the way I put it.
And you
That's a
said
thought.
something very important, which was a made up mind. And I say all the time, there is power in a made up mind. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
had that conversation with my doctor, I immediately made up my mind that my life was about to be different. So there was no excuse that I could not overcome. From my kids are 6 and 9. They have so many things going on at school. I don't have time to work out. Well, when I drop them off at choir rehearsal, Yolanda's running around the church. When I take them to cheer and football practice, I'm walking around the field. You have to find the time for yourself and not allow excuses to hinder you. Whether I don't know how to swim, well, take a swim lesson. I don't have a bike. Well, somebody can loan you a bike and you can just ride that out until it's if anyone brings an excuse to me, I've lived it. I can give you a comeback for it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We've talked about your first try. We've talked about you all being in the Guinness. Am I saying it right? Guinness World Record? Guinness World
Guinness.
Guinness.
Record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Guinness. Mm-hmm.
Just like the
Lately,
beer.
right. Lately, I've had with my little cold or whatever it's extending itself. I have not been able to pronounce words and say things. And it's like, I know I can talk. I really can, but it's, been a little bit more challenging.
Look, just be country like me.
I mean, I already get some nicks because I say triathlete and
Right.
triathlon. I add that in there, and I'm like, look, I'm
Yeah.
Southern. We're gonna
Right. Yeah.
add
Yeah.
syllables
Yeah.
and make words our
More.
own.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
be with
Yeah.
it. Um,
Everybody know I'm country. They know what they get.
that's
That's
it.
Deacon.
Deacon,
That's
Deacon
Deacon.
McKenley, Deacon Mac.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
when did you when did you know that you wanted to explore the long distance um, triathlons? Because that's also a very strong decision, and you really have to have a made up mind. What was that process like? And did you do it because I want a challenge? You saw other people doing it. What was that like for you in making that decision?
Oh, for me, it was hard, and it was on one hand, I said, okay, I've run however many marathons at that point. I've done, some sprint tries. I'd done an Olympic. I had gotten to the point where I ventured off into a half, but I was terrified of doing a full. I mean, I thought I had done enough being a Florida girl swimming in open water. You would have never told me that I was going to do that in Florida. But I planned to do a full in 2020. I registered for it, chickened out, pushed it off. My coach kept saying, why aren't we doing it? And I would come up with an excuse. And finally she was like, okay, in 21, you're getting this done. And so it was more me pushing myself to believe that I could actually do it. And I stepped out on faith. And after there it was do another one. Let's do another one. But it's truly believing in yourself that you can really do it. You can do hard things.
And then with me, it wasn't a decision. It kind of was a process because, like Yolanda said, that year of 2020, I had done triathlon. I had done a half, and I was satisfied with just doing a sprint and doing a half. But when 2020 hit, and down at where I live, I guess it was everywhere. They said the only way you could come out your house was you had to run, ride a bike, swim, or be outside exercising. So I literally went out the house every day and swim, run, and bike. And next thing I know, I look like I said, I was always into the numbers, and when I looked at the numbers, it was like, dude, you really training for a full Ironman. All the stuff you doing just trying to get out of the house. And then the thought hit me, and I talked to a couple of people that I envied because I always look at people that done full Ironman as like the greatest people. I could never do anything like that. Those people are such super athletes and stuff like that. But then after I talked to a couple of people, they be like, go for it. And Maryland was right up the road. I was like, you know what? I can go up there and train. I can go up there and do this. I know people. I can get the family there, and it just became this thing that came from nowhere. I tell people all the time, all the stuff I've done was never my thoughts. It's just something that came from somewhere and it became a dream of mine and I just went after it. But I didn't originate it. And so I signed up for the race. I went there to train and the day I showed up, matter of fact, wasn't you there? At 21, Maryland?
Yes, I was.
Yes, I thought so. I thought so. And I had trained with Trilight for that whole year. And when I showed up, it was kind of like taking candy from a baby because I had trained so much in that year of 2020. Because, like I said, we were just inside. I mean, outside. You had to train to go outside. And when I showed up, it became just fun. It was just like I would have an out of body experience. This guy was doing this stuff, and I was just riding along, just enjoying the view and smiling at people, and having a good time. And people like you really what kept me in the game. When I ran across our people, we gave each other that nod, gave each other that smile, and we see you on the next loop. And that kept me in the game.
When you were telling your story, I was like thinking, like, I thought 21, but 2020 was your big training year. Cause I was like, what
Yes,
Ironman he did in
yes,
2020, unless it was Florida. So I'm sitting up
yes.
here in my mind thinking something totally, which is why it caught me off guard. I was like,
Right,
okay.
right, right, right. Yes, that was the train. That was the training year. That was the training year.
I mean,
Yep, yep.
well, speaking of it, I mean, we're here in Black History Month, right? And I think,
Hmm.
you know, seeing others that look like you out on the course, which is sometimes few and far between, does give you some type of energy and gets you excited. And it kind of like gives you a little bit of motivation. McKenley, you talked about what it's like for you, but Yolanda, what is that like for you?
It is it's very motivating. And I'll bring up an extremely good point. Augusta. I've done 5 times Augusta half Ironman. And the first time I went, I knew people in the triathlon community because of the Black triathlon community, because it's so, we were everywhere, but we're so close. You get to know people on social media that you've never met, but it feels like family. So when you see them in person, it's like cousin, right?
Yeah.
So the first time that I did Augusta, and Black Triathlete Association, BTA, had a tent. And I remember going around the loop and everybody is like cheering and calling me by name. And I think I probably picked up from there and had probably the fastest portion of my run, because it was just, it felt good, right? To have people there to support you. And people maybe that I've met in person 1 or 2 times that will travel to another country to support you. I mean, it, it's very inspiring, very motivating, and it's all love. It's all love.
Yep.
Now, both of you have had your own accomplishments in the sport. I believe, McKenley, you placed at Maryland one year, and Yolanda, you have been all AW, all world athlete. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about what that was like for you, because again, you don't really see people or many people of color with AWAs or placing at races. So let's talk
Well,
about that.
I knew I had a good year, because every race I PR'd in 2023. So, and that was the year that I had done Augusta half Ironman. I had planned, and I went and did Ironman California. And because my training went so well, I felt amazing afterwards, that I said, you know what? Cozumel is in 3 weeks. I'm just going to sign up and do that. So last minute, I did Cozumel 3 weeks later, and I PR'd that. So it was just a good year, a good training year. And the next year, I had no idea that I had gotten AWA. It wasn't until I had registered for Augusta, and they, like a couple weeks leading up to the race, they send you emails about, don't forget about this. So I got an email that said, don't forget about your AWA benefits, and that, you get to skip the line and da 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 da. And so I had to scroll back up. I'm like, is that my name on there? I'm like, no. So I didn't even think anything about it. The next day, I was sitting on the couch. I'm like, let me go and look on the Ironman site. And lo and behold, there was a bronze bubble by my name, and it said 2023 all world athlete. And I was floored. I called my coach and I'm like, is this real? And she was like, yeah. So it was 23 was an amazing year. That's when we got our 6 star in 23. We got the Guinness World Record in 23, and I did 2 Ironmans with PRs and got AWA.
Now,
And also,
Kilimanjaro, was that at the end of 23 or at the top of 24?
Top of 24.
Okay. So I would say you had an amazing end to 2023, because I mean, January is only a few days after
Right.
23. So you had an amazing, incredible athletic year that year.
Right. So now it's like, okay, what's next? And my daughter told me, she was like, I mean, you need a sport that you don't have to check your life insurance. Can't you do something easy? I'm like, why?
Now,
and then
McKenley. Oh, go ahead.
with me, 23 was the same year that I made the podium in Ironman. And it was actually it wasn't something that I had made a goal for. It was something that, again, as I always say, it's something that I didn't plan for. But I had a good training cycle because it was my second race, and like I said, I always train in Maryland. And just so happened that particular year, it was a hurricane came through that night before, and it changed all the race conditions as far as swimming, bike, and not much for the run. But the swim was horrible, and swimming is like my worst event. So of course, I'm just trying to just get to the end, and I did. But the key was the bike. Like when I take in new athletes, I always tell them that's great. You trying to like do all the stuff in swimming, and I mean go faster. That's great. That's great. You trying to go faster and running. That's great too. But But for me, Ironman is about the bike because I can take and drop off an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours off if I come a better cyclist. And so the winds on that race day was like 20 miles per hour with gust. And when I ride, I teach folks you have to learn how to read the wind, read the trees, read everything around you as nature. I'm a country boy, so I learned those things. And that particular day, when people were struggling, I knew not to struggle in a segment, just wait till I get to a certain point and it would be better. And so it was the bike for me. And when I finished the race, I had no idea I had made the podium. It was my 65th birthday, and I had rented me a little Airbnb. I ain't took no Sherpers, I ain't took no family. I just want to spend my 65th birthday to myself, observing the water, watching sunsets and sunrises, those type of things. And about 1 o'clock that night, a fellow athlete texted me and said, "Congratulations for the podium." I'm like, "What podium? I ain't make no podium." Just like Yolanda say, no, it wasn't true. So the next morning, I woke up and I looked and it actually said third, and I couldn't believe it. Yep, I couldn't believe it. And then
Wow.
when I went to the banquet Angie made me come to the banquet. I wasn't even coming because I ain't, I didn't know what it was about. So what I made the podium. I made the podium before, so ain't nothing new about this. So she made me come to the bank. When I got there, I think total of out of all the age groups, I think it adds up to hundreds and hundreds of athletes, and I was the only black person in that whole room. I was the only black male in that whole room, maybe out of 1,000. And I sit there and they played, like the little video they make for the Ironman event. And for some reason, they chose me that particular time. And when they played the video in the room and my face came up, all the people in the room looked at me. It was like a bright sunlight. And it hurt my heart. It ain't hurt my heart, but my heart felt so gratitude because all those people stood up and clapped for me, right? Little black boy.
Representation matters.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
It
so
matters.
yeah. And I even at that moment, I still didn't realize how big it was until like sometimes later. I talked to some people, and then I realized, and I knew some people that done some great things, I'm talking about black people that done some great things in Ironman. But I thought about, it, I'm like, how many I really met that made the podium, right? And I'm like, yeah, I've done 6 stars. Yeah, I've done world, made the Guinness Book of World Record and all of that, and done some other great things. But
Seven
man,
continents. I'll just throw that in
yeah,
there.
yeah, 7 continents. But I was like, but what it means to make a podium at Ironman as a black person, as I meet people on an airplane or something, that not having a big head, just one first thing I tell them, you might not never meet nobody like me again. That's a black person that ever make a podium at an Ironman event. That's the way I put it.
I'm
I
so
mean,
glad
it,
you
it,
went.
it is what it is.
I'm so
It is
Yeah.
glad
what
you
it
went
is.
to the awards ceremony.
Yeah,
Right.
because I wasn't going. It was Angie. Angie, because she told me they had free food. And I'm greedy. Yeah, she had free food and she said I'm greedy. And when they called my age group up, 65 to 69 was 5 of us. And I was the third one. And they told us to raise those plaques above our heads. I was like, man, this is a moment.
Wow.
It
Yep,
is.
That's
this is a moment.
awesome.
Yep. Because look, one thing I know, being a coach, I know what it takes to podium an Ironman. It takes a lot of equipment. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot to pay. Some of those guys have separate run coach, separate bike coach, separate swim coach, and belongs to spend lot of money at these training centers. It was just me and my bike Casper and my little run walk and struggling on the swim, but it was enough to make that podium that day. You know, it is what it is.
And it was your time. Didn't you say that at the beginning?
Yes, it was my time. It
That
was
was
my
it.
Yeah.
time.
It was your
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah. Because during the race, I was wondering why this felt so much harder than the first time. And I'm like, why does it feel so much harder? I'm better trained and everything, but I didn't realize the effort I was putting out because I had trained so good. When I look at my watch, I was still at zone 2, maybe zone 3. So I wasn't racing hard. But I was racing hard, but just didn't know it.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for showing up that day, and thank you
Oh,
for
thank you. Yeah, yeah,
um
yeah.
we never know how those race days are going to go, right? Like race days can have so many different twists and turns, and kudos to you because that is another history maker.
Yes.
Yolanda mentioned it. We say it often. It's like we say, well, it's said so much that it can be like, gosh, why do we have to keep saying that representation matters? Why?
Yeah,
Because it
yeah,
really
yeah,
does.
yeah.
It really
Well,
does. And it gives people that hope.
it became the theme of my race team, Team Iron Mac, and the thing to me is representation matters. And when I talk to new clients, I tell them I'm like, my vision is for the sport is to bring us into it, and
Mm-hmm.
the lead drug is relay. If I can get a runner that want to run, if you can't never find no swimmer, you got to do that yourself. Or if I can get a cyclist that want to ride, I'll tell them I'll do all the swimming. The only thing I want y'all to do come run your race and ride your bike. And
Yeah.
and a few of them once they got in. As a matter of fact, one guy last year he had done one sprint and 170.3. He had done one sprint and he went and done 70.3 last year. Yeah,
Wow.
just
Relay,
based on things.
that's another gateway entry point for many people because it's an
Yes,
easy barrier. You can just do the one
yeah,
thing and keep, but it also brings in community and allows that camaraderie.
yes, yes,
Wow.
yes,
You guys
yes,
have done
yes.
so much. And obviously, I can keep talking to y'all forever and forever and forever. But talk about really quick, and then we'll segue into rapid fire. What would you tell a first timer who's on the cusp of doing something different? It might be a triathlon, it might just be trying something different. But what would you tell them, especially starting at an older age?
It's it you can do hard things. I don't know how many times I could say that because it took so long for me to believe it, but I am living, breathing proof that anything is possible.